Hey guys, welcome back to Guiding You Forward. I'm Chase Christensen with Mountain America, and we are here with Ted Ligety. And
Hey.
I don't want to get your accolades wrong, so I wrote them down. So in 2006, you won the combined gold medal in Turin.
Yep.
In 2014, giant slalom gold medal in Sochi.
Yep.
5-time World Cup champion in giant slalom. 2011 and 2013, you were the World Championship gold medal in giant slalom and also the gold medalist in Super G and Super Combined.
Yep.
Is that correct?
You have, yeah.
Did I get all of them?
I also won World Championships in 2015, but who's counting?
Who's counting? Yeah.
So, yeah. But
So-
you nailed it.
Nice. Very awesome. Okay. So the Olympics are coming up again,
Yep.
right? What is the thing that you're most looking forward to with all of that? Having been where you've been and this is all coming back up, what does that look like for you? What are you the most pumped on?
Yeah, it's different now that I'm on the other side of the fence. I'll be actually over in Bormio, which is where they're having the men's alpine events for the Olympics in Milan. And I'll be working with NBC there, commentating for the men's races. So it'll be funny being on the other side, like being on the media side of things, having been an athlete for so long. I also worked with NBC for the last Olympics in Beijing, but we were in Connecticut. And not in Beijing for that. So
this will be more homegrown.
Yeah, this will be cool. Like I really enjoy going to the races now. Like I still almost 5 years retired, so I still know most athletes.
Right.
Or was competing against most athletes, and so like there's like a cool camaraderie. I can go like talk to those guys in inspection, and most media would be like, get out of my way.
Yeah.
And those guys are like, oh, I can like talk to Marco Odermatt, who's the best in the world, and it's like we have that good rapport, so it's kind of fun to be able to share that inside perspective, and so I'm looking forward to it. Also, like we haven't had a Winter Olympics in a true like alpine winter destination in a handful of cycles. We've, last one was in Beijing, then it was in Korea, and then it was in Sochi, and so like the last three have not been in traditional, mountain areas, and so it'll be cool going to a spot like Milan where you're gonna have the alpine events for the women in Cortina and the men's events in Bormio, and so to actually have that like cultural feel of skiing of the winter, and I think that'll be a nice change. And then knowing that like we're gonna have the Olympics here in Utah in 2034, it's like cool going to Olympics this time that we know we actually have it, and we know it's in 2 cycles, which is kind of fun to like have in the back of your mind.
Yeah, nice. Do you enjoy being on that side of it, like on the commentary journalistic side of things? Like does that feel pretty different from competing as an athlete? Like what does that look like for you?
So like there's the similarities are that you get a little bit of that anxious energy, I guess. Like when like on race days, like I couldn't eat all day because I was like had that nervous energy, and so and like my heart was racing, and just like you feel that, and you don't get that extreme level of like that anxious anxiety about commentating, but you're live too, so like you do have like that little pent up energy, which is kind of, it's like fun to have that. It's not like you don't want to live under that kind of feeling day in, day out, but it's it's exciting. And then like I love the sport. I still love the sport a lot, and so to be able to try to share some of that passion I have for it, and also share some of the insight, like having been on the World Cup for 18 years and really been like on a lot of the forefront on some of the changes, like it's fun to bring that insight to a broader audience as well.
Right. Awesome. Well, let's take it all the way back to the beginning then. How did you get started with everything, right? So we kind of have heard where you ended up, but like where did this all start for you?
So I'm born and raised in Park City, and I guess if you don't ski in Park City, like what else are you going to do during the wintertime?
Right, sure, yeah.
So my parents moved to Utah for skiing essentially, and so I started skiing when I was 2 years old, and my parents like to joke that the mountains were my babysitter. So I was in ski programs from a young age, and honestly, like most of my best friends I still have to this day are kids I started skiing with when I was 5 or 6 years old in the local programs up at Deer Valley and Park City. And so that was really my introduction to skiing, was just starting from a young age, going out with family, going out with friends, and joining the ski program. So it wasn't like when I started ski racing, it wasn't like that was my parents trying to do that. It was, oh, like my buddy John's going to go ski race. Like that's what I want to do. Let's go do that as well. And so that was always kind of the main motivation as a young kid. I loved going fast. I love hitting jumps. I love just like the competitive nature of it. And so getting to ski racing was kind of a natural escalation, I guess, of like what I was doing already with my friends. And
Right.
then I remember when I first joined the Park City ski team in '94, Tommy Moe won the Olympic gold medal in Lillehammer. And like, that was when I was like, I want to become a ski racer. That is really rad.
Yeah.
And so, just kind of like grew organically from there.
Nice. What made you decide, like you were talking about going off jumps, like you could have gone quite a few different ways when it came to skiing. When did you realize, like, out of everything, I enjoy like going the fastest the most, you know, like, was that a thing with your friends? Like that you guys enjoyed getting down the quickest, or like, how did that come about? Cause you could have gone like freestyle, mogul stuff. Like there's a lot of things to choose from, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm really competitive. I guess that's like the main thing, and like the pinnacle of skiing sport, the most like objective is ski racing. And also like when I was a kid, like I'm born 1984, like there weren't snowboard parks, or which they're called snowboard parks. There weren't terrain parks when I was a kid, you know, until I was quite a bit older. So like that wasn't an avenue, but A, I'm not that skilled in that type of skiing, but B, like I really like the idea of like competing and you know exactly where you stand. And I think, you know, I respect those other sports a tremendous amount, but like there's a lot of subjectivity to it, whereas like ski racing, it's like cut and dry. You're fast or you're not. And I just love the adrenaline rush of going fast. That was a big part of it as well. And so, you know, the fact that my friends were doing that side of things, and that's also like what suited my kind of mindset as well, and just as a natural draw.
Nice. When did you realize you were kind of good at it, right? There had to have been a moment, and we were talking about that. We just had Derek Parra come and talk to us, and his story was really interesting to me. He was really successfully locally, but on broader scales, like he lost quite a bit. Yep. And in my brain, I'm like, I'd be just like, oh, okay, I'm quick locally, but this is not going well for me. So I guess it's a question kind of reflected from that. Like, when did you realize, like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. I think I can be competitive at this. Is there a moment, or did it just kind of progress naturally to, like, you wanting to just win and go as fast as you possibly can?
Yeah, so as a kid, like, I was a good skier. Like, anybody watching me from the lift or something would be, like, a good skier. But on the Park City ski team, like, I was probably the fourth or fifth best kid born in 1984. Okay. So, like, we were the best ski club in the nation at the time. So, like, I was decent regionally. Like, when we do races in Intermountain, I'd be, like, top 10, top 15, which is good, but, like, not anywhere towards the elite ranks. You know, I get beat by kids on the Park City ski team that are my same age by, 7 seconds at races, which is an eternity. That's like lot, winning by 60 points in a football game. You know, it's like it's not in the same league really, and so it wasn't until like I always had that passion for it, and like when I watched myself ski in video, I was like, oh, like I don't feel like I'm that far off. I'm just getting my butt kicked.
Was there a moment where you did eventually like hit your stride with that, and something clicked, and you, or is it just an eventual progression into slowly doing better over time?
I mean, it was like getting better was kind of like an up and down kind of thing. I think I always like think back to a story when I was about 13 or 14 years old. We were training on CBs, which is the hill in Park City, and it was like flat light and it was gnarly. And I remember like most of the other guys in the team like not finishing and kind of complaining about the conditions, and I was like really trying to like push myself down and like really fighting to finish every run. And my coach, who at the time was like my favorite coach, comes up to me like, today was awesome, like good job. If you keep that up, you could be a good college skier. And I'm like, thanks. And then in my mind, I'm like, that is not what I'm trying to do here. Like, I'm really hoping to do something. You know, I have dreams of the Olympics. I have dreams of the World Cups, and being a college skier is not like my ultimate goal. So that's like kind of indicative of where I was at the time. Like I was good, but I wasn't like at this super high level. And so I think like being kind of somewhat overlooked and having that little bit of chip on my shoulder helped push me. Also, like a couple of my friends and I, around the same age as when we first started getting carving skis. Okay. And so like after training, we go like free ski around, and then we'd start like trying to do these little carving contests where, you know, at first we're like just dragging our fists on the ground, because before this we had straight skis and we weren't really carving. And so, you know, like to feel the sensation of carving on skis was new for us. And so, after a couple of weeks, we're like dragging our elbows in the snow, and then we had our hips in the snow. And if we'd done that in like a structured coaching environment, like the coach would have been like, you're leaning in, you're doing this, you're doing that. But because like this group of us weren't amongst the best kids, we just went and free skied out after training and just kind of like played and experimented on our skis. And I think that was a big jump for myself and also for them as well.
Interesting.
That like we experienced skiing in a different way, and it helped push we were pushing each other forward. And that didn't like equal results the next day, but it was like, oh, I could bring these skills I learned from like free skiing around and laying it over, like trying to get as maximum amount of edge angles as possible into the course. It led to like some small steps forward, and then in my later teens, it did lead to some big steps forward. And then also was like what I was known for on the World Cup was having these huge edge angles and laying it over really hard. And so that's I attribute like not being amongst the best as a teenager to like that mindset of experimenting and playing, and also just like having to dig down and think for yourself and work really hard at it.
Nice. Do you feel like that mindset is what, made the difference, right? Because you're talking about like there's a lot of talented people out there, and obviously I wouldn't say that I'm particularly skilled at anything to this level, but it always fascinates me. You always hear about Michael Jordan, like practicing and perfecting until like his body gave out, Do you think there is something to like some people do have just natural potential and some people get there that way and some people are just like mentally tough and like grind their way there?
Yeah, I think if I was good at a young age, I wouldn't have like felt the need or had the permission or like felt like I should take the risk of experimenting like that,
right,
and pushing myself. And also like getting your butt kicked as a teenager, like lights a fire under you, like makes you more mentally tough than if you are the prodigy.
Right.
And so I was always had to fight for where I was, and I think that was really important. And I'm naturally a very competitive person. Like I love competing in other sports and stuff like that. So like that was always a drive for me. And yeah, I think having like that just willingness and like that like chip on your shoulder, like even when I started getting better in my like when I made the U.S. ski team when I was 18, I still like felt like I had a chip on my shoulder. Like at that point I hadn't made it, quote unquote, but like people think like, oh, making the U.S. ski team is like kind of a end game goal, and that was like I felt like it was a step on the way, and I still like had that chip on my shoulder. And like even as I got more and more successful, I always like carried that like it's like easy to call like animosity, but like this like pent up like feeling of like I need to like prove that I'm like good, because I wasn't good then and show this person wrong. And so as you said, like whether you're like manufacturing that or it's just like naturally innately there, and that was like an important piece for driving me forward.
Nice. I'm sure there was a part of it though, right? Like this coach being like, oh, you're going to be a really great college skier to make the U.S. team had to have been like oh yeah, I can only imagine for me that would be a huge moment where I was like, yeah, I'm going to be more than that.
Yeah. And I guess like that was like those two moments were separated by enough time that like I didn't feel like that as much, but more also like some of the guys I was competing against, like on the Park City ski team, another kid made the U.S. ski team as well. Like he was on it for a couple years before that, but like to make that step from him being like the best at a younger age, even the best in the world at a younger age, and then to start beating him was like close the gap and then like leapfrog him was like a pretty satisfying feeling. That was a more satisfying feeling than like proving the coach is wrong or whatever, like saying like, oh, I got you now, dude.
Well, I can see how that would be an advantage from your standpoint too, like to just grind it out and have that chip on your shoulder and then leapfrog like that. Whereas I could see the mental status of somebody who's like, well, I've been good at this forever, and I was always way better than Ted, and now he's like just crushing me, and I don't know what's happening.
I just never came at it from a perspective that I was like protecting something.
Right.
I felt like I had to go chase it. Even like when I won the Olympics when I was 21 years old, like my main goal after that was like, okay, I got to prove I'm not a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
And then when I won my first World Cup title is like, I need to prove that like I can do this over the course of a
these,
bunch of years.
These
like,
aren't flukes.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Yeah.
I kept like needing to try to figure out a way like to like prove to myself, and I wasn't like protecting anything. I was always trying to like do the next thing.
Yeah. Almost like nothing to lose.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So is that did you view it as something that could be like a lifelong career earlier to making the U.S. ski team, or was that the moment that you're like, oh, this can be just like my career moving forward?
I mean, I think like every kid that does sports like has this dream of being a professional athlete. Like growing up in Utah as like a Utah Jazz fan, and so I wanted to be John Stockton too. Unfortunately, I'm 5'10" and can't shoot that well and not that fast. So that was obviously a dream that was never going to happen. But I think like we all have those dreams and aspirations, and so to actually like start to achieve it was pretty surreal. But it's just like I still felt like I had to work on it. I never felt like one place in time like I'd like finished the goal, I guess.
Right. Nice. So you start competing at that point, right? You're 18, you're kind of moving into adulthood.
Yeah.
What did that look like for you? Was it still just scrapping by just so you could, ski and do all of this stuff? Like not to keep going back to Derek, but he talked about how hard it was to support himself while he was trying to do this amount of training because the money wasn't exactly there. Did that look similar for you, or was it a bit easier because skiing's a little bit more established at that time than maybe?
Yeah, so I made the U.S. ski team the year after high school, and ski racing is a really expensive sport.
Yeah.
And so I had like applied to colleges to go race in college, and then I had a great year, made the U.S. ski team, and like I still had to pay on the U.S. ski team that year. It was $10,000, which in the terms of like how much it cost to ski race, it was actually like a huge discounted price for like my parents. They're like, my dad was
that's
like,
not bad.
Yeah, my dad's like, you have 1 year to do this.
Yeah.
And then you got to go to college.
Yeah.
And like, so I had my first year in the development team, and instantly my first race of the year, I started racing World Cups. Like I qualified for my first race, was qualified for a World Cup. And so instantly started racing World Cups, like made a huge leap just over the summer. And then like ended up scoring World Cup points at the end of that year. So I went from being like on the development team, like kind of entry level to the U.S. ski team, to being like on the World Cup team. And then I'm like, well, I'm far beyond going to college now.
Sure,
like, and at this point, like I'd gotten some contracts, but it's like hundreds of dollars or thousands. You're not like making much money at this point. But I was like, I'm not going to college anymore. Like I'm like committed myself to this. And then made like a huge leap forward the next year. And so
was that a thought at the time though, that you're like, I'm barely scrapping by, but I can see that this being like a viable career? Or is it just like, I just love doing this and I'll do it for as long as I could just even like get by on?
Yeah, I mean, so like once I had like established myself in the World Cup, like then I didn't have to pay for training and all that stuff. So like basically like my costs from throughout the winter were zero. And like I guess was 20 in those days, like 19, 20 years old, 21 years old. Like I still lived at home with my parents in the summers. So like my costs were low, and I was like scrapping by and doing what I loved. So like I was a professional per se at that time. Like also like you could make money from contracts and keep your college eligibility if you had to go into like a trust that paid for your training and stuff that like you weren't supposed to touch. So like my dad's like, you have to do that. So I did that at first, and then stopped doing.
That's good. Sounds like you have like pretty responsible parents. Being like, okay, well, if this is going to be a career, we're still going to look out for you.
And like I said, like this is like at this point, like when I'm 20 years old, like tens of thousands of dollars, which is like, feels like a lot of money for a 19, 20-year-old, but it was like, it's not that consequential. And so just like starting to like establish yourself. So it wasn't like, I think a lot, like we're lucky in ski racing that we have like, it's an established sport, and like I didn't have many costs beyond that. So I guess in that sense, like I was a professional, but you're like, if you're not first in the world in ski racing, you're not top 5 in the world, you're it's not much of a living. Yeah.
So when it came to competing, it sounds like you saw success relatively soon, but was there a moment where you really started getting into kind of like the top echelon of this stuff and be like, man, I could make a run at maybe winning one of these one day, which you clearly did. You've won quite a few. So was there a moment that kind of hit a next gear too? Or again, was it just kind of, I was pretty successful at this to start out with, and then I just keep grinding at it until I'm like really where I want to be?
So it was like pretty like hockey stick shaped, like getting on the ski team. Like first started racing World Cup right away. Being a 19-year-old in the World Cup you're one of the, if not the youngest guy in the World Cup. So I'm out there competing with a bunch of 30-year-olds.
Right.
And at the end of the year, I scored my first World Cup points as being top 30. But in that race, I was winning the second run by a lot until the fourth gate from the finish line. I fell and I got back in the course and ended up 26th place. But like if the race had finished 4 gates earlier, I would have been fourth place.
Yeah.
And like I'd shown that speed. I'm like, okay, like I belong here. And the next year, I didn't finish worse than 15th place on the World Cup. And so like instantly then again, like establishing myself inside like the top 30 in the world, which is like a big step forward as a 20-year-old. And then the next year I was like, the first race of the year was in Seoul, and this is like the Olympic year. But at that point I was like not considered a favorite, but starting in the 60s, like got in the second run, won the second run, was 8th. Next race I was on the podium. And like, then it was like I started to have a lot of momentum, was on the podium 5 times, maybe leading into the Olympics in 2006.
Wow.
So having a great year, but I was like still not a favorite. Like, going from like the year before that, like, oh yeah, I can probably make the Olympic team to like, oh yeah, I can make the Olympic team and like maybe I'm a medal contender. So it was a pretty like steep rise. And so in 2006, like my first Olympics, I like made the team for the combined, the giant slalom, and the slalom, and my main focus was really for the slalom. And so when I competed in the combined event, I thought of it more as like a training for the slalom event like a week after that, getting on the hill and feeling the snow and just kind of like getting the Olympic jitters out. So I didn't think of the combined as a medal potential really. I just thought of it as like a cool experience. So, and at that point I wasn't a good downhill skier really either. So after the staying in the start gate of the downhill, I was like, I've got nothing to lose here. Like today is all upside, and just like surreal to be competing in my first Olympics and finish that run. And it was like not an awesome run, not a bad run. I was in like 33rd place after the downhill and 3 seconds out of the lead, which is a huge amount of time, but also off of downhill skiers. And so I was like, yeah, that was respectable. I didn't like choke in my first ever Olympic run, and I knew I had 2 slalom runs to make up some time. And I remember like I was riding up the chairlift out of the finish area with one of my good buddies on the Norwegian team, Kjetil Jansrud, who became one of the greats in our sport as well. And he was a slalom skier at the time too, and he was like 3 places in front of me, and he's like, "Hey Ted, nice downhill run." I'm like, "What are you talking about, man?"
Yeah.
He's like, "We're in this," and I was like, "We're not in this. What world are you on, living on?" And he's like, "Yeah," he's like, Didier Defago's winning, but like you'll beat him by 3 seconds in this slalom run, but like Benny Reich's only a second ahead of us, and Georgi Roka's only a half a second ahead of us. Like main slalom skiers were really close to us, and I was like, yeah, true, but like still, that's a tall task. And so like that got the idea in the head that like maybe I was in a better position than I thought I was. But still entering the slalom run, like didn't feel like there were any expectations. And I was just going to go out and go ski as hard as I can, like pretend it was the Olympic slalom race, like trying to like ski with that type of intensity, and had an amazing run, like won that run by a lot. And all of a sudden was from 33rd to 3rd place. And I like right away, I'm like, oh, like
I can do this.
I'm in bronze medal position right now, entering the last run of slalom. And I remember like being on the spin bike between runs, like thinking back, like, oh man, if like my friends that are in college right now, like, what would they think if I won a gold medal or won a silver, bronze, any medal of any color? Like, that would be unbelievable to like win a medal.
Right.
And I got super, super nervous. Like heart starts beating and like starts sweating, and I'm like, okay, I gotta like trick myself to put this out of my mind.
Right.
Like I have to think of like, just go out there and ski, and like if I do well, awesome. If I don't, like at least I was in a position to do it. Like that's kind of a cool story anyways. And so I was kind of able to like trick myself into like I guess, diminishing the importance of that, like entering that last run. And I remember like staring down that first gate before the final run of slalom and just being like, stare down the first gate so you're not thinking about the consequences. Just like think about the skiing and think about going.
Just think about the next step in front of you instead of what you maybe
exactly.
end up
Like
at.
thinking of like as a 21-year-old kid, like the idea of winning medals and like what your friends are going to think back home is like a pretty like, it's a lot of weight.
Yeah. That's
so just trying to like push that out of the mind, and had another amazing run of slalom, crossed the finish line, saw the green light, saw I was winning by 1.5 seconds at that point, which is a big margin.
That's big, yeah.
And like, throwing my hands up in the air, like, yes, I got a bronze medal. Like, super excited, seeing that, ecstatic. Watching the next guy, Ivica Kostelic, come down, who is one of the best slalom skiers in the world, losing time. Last split, he's behind me. Cross the finish line, he's in second place. I'm a half a second ahead of him. I mean, like, yes, a silver medal, like unreal. Like that's like doesn't get better.
Like we already won.
Doesn't get much better than a silver medal.
Yeah.
And then the last guy, Benny Reich, who was the best slalom skier at the day, like losing time. We're dead even. Last split, then he goes out, and I'm just like shocked. Like, what just happened? I just won this race, and two of my teammates,
that's amazing.
Steven Nyman, Scott McCartney, came out and like tackled me and hoisted me on their shoulders, and like in that video, I'm like just like have my hands above my head,
just disbelief.
With the American flag, I'm just like in shock that I just like achieved my childhood dream in my first Olympics, an event that I didn't really like conceive of being a favorite in, and so super surreal. Like I like still like pinch myself to this day thinking about that. And my parents were actually at the race, and so when I saw them through like the media corral like 10 minutes later, like they both had like the tears coming down their eyes, and that was like when the first emotions hit. And like the next night when I got the medal and heard the national anthem, they were on the front row, and so
that's so cool.
Like in that video too, I like looked down at them, and like a handful of times I'm like shaking my head like in disbelief at the whole situation.
What did that feel like to achieve that much that young? Did it come with, I mean, you talked about like, okay, well, this can't be like a one-hit wonder. Did that come with additional pressure? Like, did you give yourself time to just be like, I'm a gold medalist this young and this early in my career, what else can I achieve? Or was it just like you tried to live in the moment and be like, let's just be happy that we achieved this?
Yeah, I was excited I just achieved that, but I still had 2 more events at that Olympics to compete in. So, I mean, I've achieved the ultimate goal. But there I was like, in the contention for a medal in the slalom, and my giant slalom was good at the time. I mean, in those other events, like in the giant slalom, I was actually winning the race until like the last split, and I went out in the first run of the giant slalom. So I skied well there, which like I was proud of the skiing and not proud of the result, obviously.
Sure. But still motivating, right? Like the examples you talked before, you could still see it. You're like, I was already doing really well. It was only this little thing, so I'll get that right next time, and that keeps you going.
And then in the slalom event, which is like where I was, hoping for a medal, I finished the first run and I was in third place, but I ended up straddling a gate. Like I ran over a gate with my tip, and so I got disqualified, and so that ended the day. So like at least I like in my mind I was like frustrated, but I also took the positives that like I skied at a really high level in both those runs.
Right.
And the thing about like ski racing in the Olympics is like the next week you go back to World Cup racing.
Sure. Yeah.
Like the season keeps going. Like you don't just like fly home and do the media tour and like your season's done. Like you like and like bask in it. Like you're back into the grind. Like the day after the Olympics closing ceremonies, we flew to Korea for a World Cup race there. And there's actually like a funny story around that because I won the Olympics. My coaches, like I'd always had roommates at this point. And so my coach was like, hey, you get your own room. Like you won the Olympics. Good job. And
the best reward of all.
Yeah. So I wake up that morning of that first race. I'd had my own room. This is, 2 days after we had closing ceremonies to a banging on my door. And I wake up all groggily, and it's a security guard and my physio. And they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, it's noon. You missed the race. So, first race with my own room, I slept through the race. And I was, super frustrated. But the next day.
I'm sure the jet lag is brutal with that.
Yeah,
too,
the jet
right?
lag. I mean, I should have set more alarms. But the next day, I woke up and then won that race, that GS race, which was my first World Cup win.
Wow.
And really like vindication of not being a one-hit wonder. And so...
So that vindication came like immediately that you're like, oh, I'm good enough to have won this at the Olympics, and I'm good enough to go to the World Cup and win here
exactly.
Too.
So that was a huge vindication, and then like after that, just kept progressing from there.
Nice. You mentioned you were skiing at a really high level for the slalom and giant slalom, but maybe had things here or there. But we're going on to win at World Cups and in World Championship. Was that still motivating to be like, okay, let's get to the next Olympics and let's get what I really wanted out of this? Was that like the motivation was like to put it all together?
Yeah, for sure. I think if we take a step back, ski racing is, I'm of course very biased in this, but I think it's the toughest mental sport in the world.
Yeah.
It's a sport where you have a minute and a half to prove yourself. You don't get 30 seconds to figure it out because you're out of the race. A mistake is losing the race, or at the ultimate extent, death.
Yeah.
We unfortunately lost a downhill skier a couple weeks ago in a training accident in Chile. The consequences are real. It's not like tennis where you double fault, you lose a point and you get back into it.
Right.
You make a big mistake in a ski race and you are in the hospital.
Yeah.
So
could even be a career ender.
Exactly. So you're in the start gate. You're like, okay, my mistake spectrum is losing hundredths or tenths to the ultimate cost.
Yeah.
And I only have a minute and a half to do it. I don't get to change my intensity. I got to nail the plan. And so you don't have any margin for error, and you only have a tiny window of opportunity.
Right.
And so I think that makes it a really hard mental sport. And then you throw on top of that, it's an outdoor sport.
Yeah.
The course
conditions are crazy.
Yeah, the course changes person to person because every single person that goes down the course puts a little rut in the course, and so it changes person to person. The light changes, the weather changes, the course sets changes, the snow conditions, the variables are just astronomical. And so at the Olympics, by and large, the favorites very rarely win.
Right.
Going into being on the commentating side of things, commentating for the Beijing Olympics, Michaela Schifrin was supposed to win 5 medals.
Right.
Walked away with 0. She has by far and away the highest winning percentage of any ski racer ever, and it's still below 50%.
Yeah.
Like I said, I went out those races, but as a ski racer, even the best, like I said, Michaela Schifrin loses more races than she wins.
Right.
So you get used to, I guess, not winning. Used to taking the positive. You have to, because in ski racing, most of the time, you're not winning. Even when you do well or you put good things together, you have to be able to take the good lessons out of those things and obviously learn from the mistakes as well. But I think a lot of people who separate themselves in the sport are the people who can not dwell on the mistakes and take the positives. And so having had those mistakes in the Olympics, but also having some success, I knew how to kind of balance those. And going the next 3 years of competing on the World Cup, ended up winning a giant slalom title, which is the ultimate goal in the sport of ski racing. Is Olympics are great. That's where everybody, especially in the U.S., sees the Olympics. But winning World Cup titles as ski racers and in the ski community is really the ultimate goal, because it's encompassing of a whole season worth of skiing.
Yeah.
It's not just one day. It's you have to be good the first day of the year to the last day of the year. And if you make too many mistakes over the course of that year, or have a bad week here and there, you don't win the title. You have to be good all year long. And so that's always in the ski racing world the better measure. And so to win a season title was the ultimate goal. And then going into the Vancouver Olympics in 2010, I was, first in the world at the time. Been on the podium in Super G that year. Been on the podium in Giant Slalom. Was defending combined champion. So entering those games, I wasn't a nobody anymore. I was established. I was, a so-called star on the World Cup, and and ultimately, I was 4th in the combined race there. So a couple hundredths off of a medal, which is like I said, you are used to that in ski racing. It's painful to go to the Olympics and be hundredths of a second off of a medal. fourth place, you get nothing, and nobody knows and nobody cares. Like you would probably have to dig deep in your research to find that.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was a bronze medal, you would have said in the intro.
Like, oh, there it is.
But that's like the second. And then it's like felt good about the skiing, not good about the result. But in the giant slalom, I really remember like, okay, I'm like the favorite, and I think in ski racing, because of all the things I just said, like the variables and all that, you have to have like a calculated nonchalance about it. Like you're calculating your approach, and you really like try to dial everything in that you can control.
Yeah.
But you have to be pretty nonchalant about all the things you can't control.
Right.
And that's like was always the best way. And that day I was like just overanalyzed everything. Like I tried to be like super, like I can be analytical, but like there I was like analyzing where I need to be on every single turn. And where in most races I like would memorize the sections of the course that really mattered or where there's direction changes, and then just kind of would get the flow of the course in inspection and not have to think about gate to gate. And there I thought about gate to gate.
And just have confidence in yourself.
Yeah,
overall.
exactly. Confidence in yourself to execute. Like in the start gate, like I would go through my plan a bunch of times in my head, and then like the second my poles go over the wall, it's like control, delete. You go in like instinct mode.
Yeah.
And like so you have the game plan,
like muscle memory
hidden
from that
somewhere
point.
back there that you can react to, but like you actually have to like ski in the moment, because in a giant slalom course, you're going by a gate once every second.
Right.
And so you can't think about technique then. You can't think about your game plan every single gate because things are coming at you really fast.
Too fast, yeah.
And in that race, I like thought about every single thing. Mm-hmm. And kind of like the more unfortunate part of that is I was 6th after first run. So I was like, oh, I'm like 6 tenths off the gold, like not that far off the gold. I'm like a couple tenths of a second off of bronze. Like
this is working.
Like
yeah.
That like over calculation didn't really like yield me a result where I learned a lesson negatively. Like kind of like showed like, oh, if I like can do something like that again and just like tweak a couple things, like I can be on the podium. And skied the same way second run and ended up 9th. And that was like a really painful experience to like know that I like approached this big day differently than I approached any other race. And I paid the price for that, and it was like a good light bulb moment to be like, okay, I have to just like trust my game plan and then let myself ski.
Right.
And when you make mistakes, like let those be, and just like dedicating myself to the idea that like every single time I crossed the finish line, like I would be proud that I pushed myself to where I need to be pushed.
Right.
And not that I was thinking back on, all the little details.
Right.
And so that's like what led to like the next bunch of years of like a much higher level of success.
Wow, that's really interesting. Do you think that and to back up a little bit, I listen to this podcast, Smartless, and they reference it all the time. They call it sexy indifference. And I think that applies to so many things. And that's kind of almost exactly what you're talking about, is that you're not indifferent to it, but you're confident that you know how to do this, you're good at it, and that once you get on the course, you're going to do what you need to do, but game plan beforehand and have that in mind. But I was going to ask you, do you feel like that's always been a strength of yours to kind of maybe take away the silver linings of a lot of these things and like kind of just not block out the bad, but focus on the positive to roll it over? Do you feel like that's a strength of yours always, or is that something that you've always had to work at?
I think I was really lucky that intrinsically I was good at the sport mentally. I'm good at mental sports. I think I'm good at like letting myself do the thing.
Right.
Which I think is really hard to do in life and in most sports.
Yeah.
It's just like at the end of the day, like once you're good at something, like your mind kind of only gets in the way.
Yeah. You're talking to the right person. I overthink everything, so I don't even understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's like the thing is like, you have to like trust. Like my best seasons, my best races were always like after I had an amazing prep period. Like after I had great training sessions, after I like been training, we had good training volume, my like body was feeling good, that like I could go do the thing and not think about the thing.
Right.
That was always important. I was always pretty good at like being able to separate those two things. Even from like a young age, like I probably raced as good or a little bit better than I trained. And I think in the sport of ski racing, like I trained with so many people over the course of the years that are way faster than me.
Right.
That could never put it together in a race. And so if you can race, I think it's like true in any sport, in anything. Like if you can be as good as you are in the actual event as you are in training or as you are in practice, you're going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Because most people take a step down in their performance when like the pressure comes on. And if you like have that special ability, like I think I had the ability to like ratchet it up here and there beyond like my training performance. And I competed against some guys like Marcel Hirscher, who was like one of my biggest competitors. Like, man, that guy always skied better in race than he did in training. And so those people that can like make that next step are great.
Right.
Like they're going to be phenomenal. And so it's that like mental piece is really hard. I think it's really hard for people to get out of their own way.
Right.
And to like trust their own process and abilities. And because like I said, like in most sports, like if you're thinking about every little technical aspect, like you're going to be not very smooth in what you're doing.
Yeah. I'm a huge car guy and I'm way into Formula One. And the main thing, like hearing you say all of this, the main thing I compare it to is Formula One, like putting together a qualifying lap, which I would have to think is pretty similar, is that you don't have time to think about every little detail. You have to do a lot of this on muscle memory, but it's almost like with that, it's like the difference between first and last, you're literally talking maybe half a second, sometimes 3/10. But it's all about putting it all together. The person who puts all of the sectors together is probably going to end up qualifying first. And that, I'm sure, as you've said, has to be a real mental game.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's all in your head. I mean, of course, there's other factors, but you know, so much of it. And I say, like, when I like am with younger guys on the team now, or I'm like mentoring or coaching, and whenever I do that, it's like you can go so far just by letting yourself do the thing in the moment. The mental side of it, like, if you can ski, like I said, or if you can compete just like you train, then you are going to make a huge step forward.
I was going to talk to you about this too. Like, what kind of speeds are we talking about? Because like you talked about the mental aspect of competing, but the fear of possible injury and everything, like what are the speeds? Because I don't feel like I know that I've seen maybe some brutal crashes when it comes to like downhill racing and slalom and that, but what speeds are we talking about? Like what is...
So in downhill, I've been clocked at 100 miles an hour.
Holy crap.
Most downhill courses go like you're between 60 and 80 miles an hour, more or less the whole time. You have a couple sections where you reach 100 here and there. So fast, you're faster than highway speeds.
Right, yeah.
And Super G, which is like the next event. So like if I were to break down the events, like downhill is you're basically going the contour of the trail.
Right.
Super G is like keeping in the same family of speed where you have a couple extra turns.
Okay.
So there you're going, 60, 70 miles an hour and 80 at times, but it's a little more technical because you have more turns. And then Giant Slalom, which was like my best event, that would be like relating to if you're out free skiing, like this tempo turns, what most people do when they're out there just skiing, like it's a turn every second. Like distance wise, they're like 25 to 30 yards apart.
Okay.
But you're going 40 to 60 miles an hour, kind of in that speed range.
Right, but cutting much harder.
Gate every second and a half. And then slalom, which is like the really tight turns, you're going by a gate every 0.6 of a second.
Right.
And you're probably going 25, 30 miles an hour, give or take.
Okay.
So yeah, like the events are very, very different. Like it's very rare when you have a downhill skier that's good in slalom and vice versa. So it's unique in that, like, because generally like downhill skiers will be like 220 plus pounds and stick something because they gotta be big and have a lot of momentum. And slalom guys are like small and spry. It's like it's your lineman versus your safety.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would attribute to your success of kind of spanning that? If if it's the body types are so different and everything, is there anything that you particularly felt like you did to make up for that in certain events?
Yeah. So like my heroes growing up were guys like Shatil Andre Ama and Lasse Schus, who had won in all disciplines. I really respected that. I never wanted to be a specialist. I always wanted to compete in everything. Right. And so one of my proudest achievements is that I was able to be on the podium in all the events. So I had a downhill podium, won some Super Gs, won a lot of GSs on the slalom podium as well. And so that's probably my proudest achievement. But like, I definitely had skills that worked well in some downhills and didn't work well in others. Like where I was in the podium second in downhill was in Lenzerheide, which is a very steep technical course. Like it mirrored perfectly into my skill set as mostly a giant slalom skier.
Okay.
I was never going to be able to win a Val Gardena, which is like flatter course, just a lot of terrain, like more of like a flat motocross style trail. I was like good at like the steep, turny ones. And so I think it's like with anything, like you got to maximize your strengths and try to minimize your weaknesses, and which is what I tried to do in those other events. But
sure.
At a certain extent, like I didn't end up racing. I never raced Val Gardena to training run. Like it just wasn't worth me going there because like if I knocked it out of the ballpark, like amazing run, maybe I'd be like 20th place.
Right.
Because it just wouldn't ever suit my skill set. You know, being 190 pounds and 5'10" just wasn't going to be able to compete versus Bryce Bennett, who's on the U.S. ski team, who's won there. He's 6'8" and
oh my gosh,
is 240 pounds, and like so he has huge shock absorbers for doing that, absorbing the terrain, and just carries way more momentum. And so it's just like how do you compete like that?
Yeah,
in a condition like that, and you just have to realize what your strengths and weaknesses are, and that's kind of like partially how you get funneled into whichever events. Nice,
very cool. So talk to me a little bit about, at some point, right, you said like you're kind of a rising star in cup racing, and I assume more sponsorships come along with that. But I also wanted to get into, so you're one of the co-founders of Shred Optics, right?
Yeah.
What did that transition look like for you to like, bigger sponsorships or contracts are coming in, and you're starting to look at the entrepreneur side of it? Like what opportunities did you see there that you felt like you wanted to go for and found this company as well?
Yeah, so after I won the Olympics in 2006, like obviously that's like a big jump forward,
Sure.
All of a sudden like started having way more sponsorship opportunities. Also the time like I'd always had like, I remember really like tinker as far as equipment goes, like kind of engineering minded, but also like kind of entrepreneurial minded too. Like I always thought I wanted to like start something in the ski industry. And so after I won the Olympics in 2006, like I was looking out there in the world of like goggles, and I was like, my options are either looking like an old German tourist, because it's like this Euro stuff that just wasn't cool. I would never like want to go ski with my buddies on a powder day back home with, which is what I was using at the time, because that's what like sponsored ski racing. And then the other side of things was like the more like free ride, freestyle oriented stuff, but the field of view wasn't big enough for ski racing, and the lenses weren't good enough. So I was like, I need to create something that's like fun and cool, and functional. Also like has the performance element that I needed. And so I developed a friendship with a guy who's an engineer in Italy, who'd been making protective gear for myself, and we're on a bike ride actually here on the Crest Trail.
Oh, nice.
And I'm like, hey, I have this idea like for a company called Shred, because Shred is my nickname, Ted Shred as a kid.
Oh, nice.
And I want to like create fun like looking goggles, but also like really cutting edge in the performance side of things and really push forward. And he's like, I know where a goggle manufacturer is. Let me get back to you. And a couple weeks later, he's like, hey, I found a place where you can make goggles. So what do you want to do? And like, I went on Microsoft Paint and made a logo, and and then we had his
AI wasn't a thing back then.
His sister, who was going to school to become an engineer too, like refine it, and it just two buddies like starting nowhere, no business experience really, just like launched it a couple months later and just went from there. And so it's been a really fun experience. I mean, the world of retail and the ski industry is not an easy industry for sure, but it's been a cool, When I thought about like products, like I was always trying to give myself a competitive advantage, trying to find a way that I could create something that would help me compete on the mountain. So, in terms of like goggles, like the light conditions make a huge difference. If anybody goes skiing, like when it's flat light,
it's terrifying.
It is hard to ski, and when it's sunny, it's not. And like that can be the difference between seconds in ski racing. So I was like, let's try to figure out a way to create a lens that like I can see better in flat light. And so luckily my partner went to MIT, and so like we started working with MIT Sports Lab there to like create a new lens. And so like we always try to think of all of our products in this like solution for like making like the most high end level of skiing better and advantage, but how that would actually like lead down to the mass consumer. Like my wife, who's a good skier, the difference between flat light and a good light is she's in the lodge on a flat light.
Right. Yeah. She's not worth the risk.
Yeah, exactly. She's like getting a hot chocolate or coffee in the lodge and not out skiing. But like when you can see better, like then she can be out there and enjoying it. So that's been fun to like think about products in those kind of terms of like the high end and like the actual mass case scenario. Yeah. So that's been really fun. And I mean, being able to do that from a young age, I mean, kind of wild to like think now that I'm 41, like we started this 20 years ago. Yeah. And I was a kid, didn't know anything. Like I was just like, let's jump in and do this. Like, it's like I said, it's been a wild experience and massive education. Yeah.
Was it hard to scale that at the same time of while you were competing professionally? Because like a lot goes into the entrepreneur side of things of like scaling a business and all of that. Was it tough to balance those while you were doing this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to be honest, like I wasn't able to be the day-to-day person on that because I was competing. I mean, I was like, we were very early on the remote meeting side of things because I was all over the world and my partner's in Italy. And so luckily he's a smart guy. We have like great partnership. We've had great people working for us. So like, I have been always involved, but mostly from like the 30,000 foot view. So like helping push that wherever I could. But obviously like my main priority was the ski racing side of things. But yeah, it's like, it wasn't easy to balance, but I also felt like it was nice having something else in your life that wasn't just like, almost I felt like an insurance policy. Yeah. In the sense of like, I had something else to fall back on. I had another purpose. I had something else to like use my brain on, like, in the world of ski racing, like we're on the road from basically August until March. Yeah. And you're with your coaches and teammates and like you eat, sleep and drink ski racing 24/7. So it's like, if things aren't going perfectly, it's hard to escape. It's hard to have other things to like focus on. And so that was like a nice escape in a sense. Like I could go back to the room and I like had something else to work on. Right. Which was always nice.
Was it ever a thought that would kind of be right? Because like with being a professional athlete, I'm not one, so maybe you can answer this a little bit more, but it always feels like there's like a shelf life, right? Like the younger you are, some of the more advantages you have, your body can take more punishment, all of that stuff. Was there ever a thought that like, oh, this is what I'll do, once I maybe retire from professionally? Was that the thought of like, then I'll focus more on the company and everything?
Yeah, that was 100% the forethought. Like, oh, like I should, when I started, it was like kind of, I had the idea, I had the opportunity and a friend to like help me execute it. And also like I had all of a sudden gained kind of the stature that like would warrant getting some publicity and like actually like create some demand. But always with like the back of my mind, like, oh, this is something like I can fall back on, whether like I'm continue to be super successful or I'm not successful or I get injured. Like I have another thing. Can
bail to that.
And so like kind of like in a sense like took some pressure off of the competition side of things.
Obviously you have all these successes and now you're retired. Has that led to a lot of, you mentioned coaching earlier and like mentorship. Are you doing a lot of that now that you're retired, or are you focusing mainly on the business? Like, what does that look like for you now?
Yeah. So I retired almost 5 years ago, and honestly, like so many professional athletes, but ski racers especially, like the retirement's tough. Like going from being your own boss, like knowing exactly what you're supposed to do every single day,
right? Yeah,
is a tough transition. So I feel like I was really fortunate that I had already started a business, so I had instantly something to like go in and dig my teeth into. Right. But also I had 3 kids at that point too, so like that's built-in purpose. So I didn't feel like I had that kind of like lost wandering like a lot of other athletes have. So I was lucky to have like the family situation and the business situation, and having had the career I had, like I didn't have a lot of like the urgency on the other things maybe that other people would have. So it's that side of things was like I was really lucky to have. And so like people always ask like, oh, do you like want to coach? It's like, man, coaching ski racing is a hard job. Yeah. Like I have so much respect for it because you do all the hardest parts, like the travel of a ski racer, but none of the fun parts. You know, you don't get to run the course. The glory. You don't get to run the course. You don't get you don't get the glory. You're up early, like shoveling the course, watering courses. Right. And so I knew I couldn't do the travel piece of it for sure. But I go out, I'm on the board of the Park City ski team, so I go out with them every once in a while. Like, I love staying engaged. I coach a kids camp up in Mount Hood every summer. So I stay engaged and in touch, just like not as a day-to-day thing. And I still stay in touch with a lot of the racers on the U.S. ski team, and a handful of them will call me here and there, like, nice. Picking my brain. So I love to stay involved in that side of things. But, man, like, the coaching I have so much respect for, because it is a hard job. It's pretty, like, I don't want to say it's thankless, but it's kind of thankless.
Yeah.
And so much, I think the hard part about ski racing, I think especially like from a coaching perspective, is like, once the sport is always evolving, and once you reach the highest level, like, the steps to get better kind of have to come from within.
Here.
Yeah. And like, my best coach is like this guy, Forrest Carey, who now coaches at the Park City ski team. He was like my coach for most of my career. Coach Bodie Miller, like, definitely the most successful American coach of all time.
Right.
Like, what made him so good was, like, he did not dictate. He was like, it was always a conversation. Like, he wanted to try to understand, like, what you were working on, what you're feeling, and so he could give input on it, or like kind of like squeeze what you're kind of trying to do out of you to like help you distill it.
Okay.
And so like, that was always like such a valuable thing. So like, somebody from the outside, like, that would be really hard to understand how to value.
Right.
But that is way harder than just to like say, like, here's the play, this is what you need to do.
Yeah,
this, like, to have like such a deep understanding is really hard. And so like, the best coaches did that, and then also like, they're out there trying to just like smooth way, like, make your life as frictionless as possible. Like, whether it's training, like taking all like that grind out. And so it's a tough job. I mean, it's not for everybody, and the best that do it are really, really good at it. And it takes a lot of skill, intelligence, and like kind of knowledge of the sport as well. But like, you have to know how to like get myself to like give you what I'm thinking and like my feelings to reach that next level. Yeah.
Right. You mentioned your family, and, you know, focusing on that now that you're retired. What does that look like for you? Like, how many kids do you have?
So I have 3 boys. I have 5-year-old twins and an 8-year-old, and my house is like a WWE wrestling stage. Yeah. It is nuts. But they're fun. I mean, it's awesome. Like, they all ski. My oldest can ski anywhere in the mountain. Do
they have any hopes or aspirations of racing too, or is that more like, I hear actors all the time. I feel like this is the one I see the most, where actors are like, their kids are like, oh, I want to act too. And they're like, no, you're not doing that. Any feelings there, or would you be supportive if they want to do that?
So my oldest, who's 8, like, he traveled on the World Cup with me for the first couple of years of his life. Like, he went to 13 countries before he was 1 year old.
That's crazy.
And so like, he sees pictures, he kind of like understands like who I am and like my accomplishments a little bit.
Sure.
And so he's like, says now he wants to be a ski racer. I selfishly want them to be ski racers until they're 13, so I can take them anywhere in the world, go ski on a ski trip, and they wouldn't slow me down.
Right. Yeah.
So that's my selfish ambition.
Come keep up with
ambition
me.
For them. If they want to compete in it past that, great. My wife, who like does not have much of a skiing background, like, she played Division I soccer and stuff.
Oh wow.
But, like, traveled in the World Cup with us, and like, she saw where I was, like, being the best in the world, and like what that afforded. And we were also friends with a lot of guys who were 10th in the world, that is like
scraping by
a totally different life.
Right.
You know, and so she understands like making it isn't really making it.
It's like
and
marginal.
So, yeah. And so like, she is like, absolutely not. I don't want them to become ski racers.
Right.
But I'll support them in their dreams, whatever they want to do. I mean, we're fortunate to be, you know, living in a place where we can go skiing, mountain biking, and have them experience all these things that I really love.
Right.
And so if they want to pursue it, I'll help them however I can.
Would you coach them in that?
Like, so I really value, like, I think my kids are similar to me, that I'm very strong-willed, and I think if my parents had coached me, I would have resisted them and would have pushed back on it, and probably wouldn't have loved it. And so if I can help them, I will. But I think they don't want to be coached, and I don't want to coach them either. I think, obviously, like in so many sports, and ski racing included, like, the parent athlete thing works to a certain extent, but I think there's also a lot of downsides to that as well. Mm-hmm. So I do not aspire to be that that parent. But I want to, you know, help their dreams, whatever they are. Yeah. So whether that's ski racing or it's ballet or whatever it is, whatever they want to do, or math. Like, I want them to find what they really love and pursue it.
Was it hard to build a family while you were doing all of this? You mentioned your first kind of traveled with you for a while, but when the twins came along, was that more difficult? Like with you being on the road?
It was often? Difficult, like from the first one on. Like, I mean, even with Jax as like a 6-month-old in hotel rooms traveling the World Cup, like that was hard. And it was fun to like share that. Like actually, like two of my coaches also had kids within a few weeks of each other. Like it's kind of like, it was actually fun because we had three young kids on the road all together with us. Right, so like we kind of had like a very like family like kind of road situation, which was really fun. That made it like, I guess, possible. Like it wouldn't have been possible really otherwise. If it was just like my wife and I were traveling with a kid on the World Cup, that would have been difficult. But the fact that we had two other coaches, and actually one of my teammates, Stephen Nyman, who's local here as well, he had a kid a couple weeks before us as well. So like we kind of had this cohort of people with kids on the road, which
makes it easier,
fun. When the twins were born, like that was middle of COVID, so like they weren't able to travel. And
fun.
At a certain point, my wife she had a flight home from Sweden by herself with Jax, the oldest, one time, and he like didn't sleep the whole way and was like running up and down the aisles. And she's like, I am never doing an international flight by myself again. And so that kind of ended their travel a little bit. And, so like when I retired, it was a mix of really like my body falling apart, not feeling like I could like compete at the level I wanted to compete at, and also the home front was like too hard to like be the dad I wanted to be. And so it was like, if any one of those factors was totally different, maybe I would have kept going at some level. But just that point is like I can't square this anymore with all those factors.
Yeah, that makes sense. This is a personal interest of mine. I like lifting too, but what did training look like for you while you were competing versus kind of now? I mean, was there a lot of strength training? Was it a lot of technique stuff? And what does that look like for you now?
Yeah, so in a GS turn, you're pulling up to 6 Gs. So that's I was almost 200 pounds when I was racing, so that's 1,200 pounds balanced on one leg.
Yeah.
And so you have to be strong.
Right.
Like it's eccentric strength, it's muscle endurance. So we were in the gym all summer long, lifting weights a lot. Like I'd lift lower 3 days a week, core 5 days a week, a little bit upper. A lot of time on the mountain
lifting
bike.
Lower 3 days a week. That sounds awful.
Yeah. So working really hard in the gym. Yeah. Like when I was competing, like I didn't have a pair of pants that weren't stretched around at the thighs. Yeah, exactly. Like, so you're working really hard in the gym all summer long, and then in the season, because you're skiing so much, you lift maybe once a week, but more just like purely power. Power and like high end strength, like not doing super high reps and stuff.
Okay.
And then like always at the core, like like I said, in the GS turn, it's 6 Gs.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Going through your core, like a bunch of forces pulling you around, so you have to be able to stabilize. I mean, I ended up having 3 back surgeries. Any ski racer that makes it to 30 has back trouble because they have to sustain that force.
Oh, interesting.
In less than ideal, body position.
Right. Yeah.
So like, core stability is hugely important. So racing wise, you have to be an animal in the gym for sure.
Nice.
Nowadays, like really it's like trying to like keep my body healthy enough to do the fun things. Like I still ski hard. I still go out there and like, lay turns over, drag hip. I love going out on my mountain bike, pushing myself there. So like now it's like about lifestyle maintenance and like staying healthy, and having had all the back issues, like staying strong enough to like hold forces is important. So I still like work out, but at a tenth, maybe like tenth of the volume and intensity. So definitely a totally different level, but more on the lifestyle side of things.
Nice. Cool. Well, I wanted to go through kind of some favorites of yours. So, favorite Olympics and why?
So, my favorite Olympics, I didn't actually get to compete in, but the 2002 Olympics.
Okay.
I was able to four in the slalom, but having the Olympics in Utah, I think they did an amazing job with it. I think it was such a cool atmosphere.
Is that a bummer really not to be competing as they come back to Salt Lake?
I'd be 50. I'll be 49 years old when they happen here. So that's obviously like way out beyond. Of the question, and like so, yes, it's easy to like realize that they're coming. I'm involved with the committee bringing the games back. So it's fun to be like involved intrinsically.
So you'll be involved a lot with
exactly.
bringing it here and all of it, making it happen.
Yeah, I've already been really involved. So that's my favorite Olympics. I mean, other Olympics were really cool in all sorts of different ways, but I think Salt Lake really stood out as far as doing an amazing job.
Would that be your favorite, like even, I guess outside of competing, that would be your favorite thing just because it was here at Salt Lake and kind of seeing that all happen and not even competing there?
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's been an amazing thing for Utah in the sense, like, I think everybody, like every nation when they get the Olympics, like wants to like win the medal count and all that. And so no Utahns, like born and raised Utahns, won medals in Salt Lake. In Torino, I was the first born and raised Utahn to win a gold medal. And what's amazing about the legacy of the Olympics in 2002 is every single Olympics since then, a new born and raised Utahn has won an Olympic gold medal.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Which is nuts to think like we didn't win gold medals in Salt Lake in 2002, but we've won gold medals that from kids who like were able to live in that legacy, which I think is such an amazing thing. Like looking out to 2034 is like we are going to have Utahns win gold medals because of the legacy of that. And
continuing that legacy, right? Like inspiring a whole new generation of athletes.
My kids will be 16 and 13. Like they're going to be too young to compete, but like they'll
see that,
reap the benefits, whether it's in sports or not, of those things. And we've done an amazing job keeping that infrastructure. So it's not just like skiers or snowboarders that are winning medals. We're winning medals in speed skating. We're winning medals in so many other sports. That is just a legacy of that. And I think that's a cool gift that we have in Utah from those games is inspiring the next generation of kids. Like the more Ted Ligety's or whoever, like Josh Christensen's or all, like whoever it is, Sage Kotzenberg's, like the more of us there are, like the more these kids realize like this is a real
like this is
attainable thing.
Me.
I mean, I think that's like was my big lesson from 2002 was I got a 4 in the slalom and like I got to see my heroes on their biggest day 20 minutes before they got out of start gate.
Right.
Acting just like my 17-year-old buddies and I.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, these guys aren't machines.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to be some superhuman level of concentration. These guys are the same as me. They're just way faster skiers.
Right. Yeah.
And so like that is an easier thing to break down than like thinking everybody has this like godlike concentration level. So I think that's like what's a unique thing about Utah. And then beyond the sporting level is I think, it brings opportunities, infrastructure, all this other stuff. So it's cool to like have that come back in 8 years.
Nice. I'm kind of bouncing around, but it did bring up a question for me. Like, how did it feel to represent the United States at that level? Like, was there a huge sense of pride? Like, not only were you representing Utah, but you're representing the United States as a whole. Like, what did that feel like?
Yeah, it's wild to think of when you're at the Olympics, like winning gold medal, it's like this big grand thing. But also when you like stand on the podium, like hearing the national anthem, you like also realize like how small you are in this like greater community and how you're like a small piece of that and what it all represents. So it's cool that like, especially Olympics, like you have so many different athletes there, so many different nations, and like having that feeling to represent the U.S. is really unique and surreal and is really like, of course, like a point of pride.
Sure. Was there a lot of like team camaraderie around that spirit of like, well, somebody from the U.S. just has to be up there? Or was it still like, yeah, great, I'm representing the U.S., but it's still kind of more this personalized thing that I'm striving for?
So it's like, what's cool about the Olympics is, you have all these other sports happening. So you're tracking sports you don't normally track. Yeah, because you're like, oh, like, so like you are excited when somebody else in another sport wins a medal for the U.S. Like that is exciting. I mean, of course, like I was there to compete and to win myself. Like that was, of course, like my first objective. But like I think one of my favorite Olympic moments that wasn't my own was in Sochi, the men's slopestyle, watching the U.S. sweep the podium and having Josh Christensen win. Another Park City kid. That was such a point of pride, like seeing that as a new sport come in, skiing, like so is adjacent to my sport. Right. And I knew all those guys on the podium. Like that was neat to be able to watch that happen at that level. So that was like a big point of pride. I mean, watching USA versus Canada and like Vancouver and like the gold medal match there was super cool. So like those are some ones that stand out. But I think that's cool to be able to like follow the other sports and like you see them later. Like you see them at the medal ceremony or in the closing ceremonies or otherwise, and it's like it's cool to see that and feel that camaraderie amongst other athletes.
Nice, very cool. So tell us a little bit about your work with the National Activities Center.
Yeah, so I've, having competed, like I'm lucky to be on the board of the National Winter Activities Center, but also the Park City Ski and Snowboard team and World Cup Dreams. And like, I think the through line of all of these is they're all about helping kids fulfill their dreams on snow. I mean, the National Winter Activities Center is a ski area. Actually, it's a nonprofit ski area in New Jersey that gets kids in the tri-state area skiing, which we've had over 10,000 kids introduced to skiing for the first time throughout the YMCA's and stuff there.
Nice.
And then like through the Park City Ski Team and the World Cup Dreams, like all of those is about like trying to give what I experienced, like the sport, to more kids. Right. Trying to have them experience it at just an introductory level or being able to follow their dreams. And so it's cool to like give back in that regard to help introduce, but also extend that dream to more kids in the future.
Right. Like we were talking about earlier, the game's inspiring kids, but also obviously you spending your time on this helps cultivate those athletes in the future that'll help carry us forward on a lot of that. Yeah,
and just like I'm obviously passionate about skiing. Like I want as many people to ski and enjoy the mountains. I think it's a great way to have physical activity, but also
I unfortunately don't feel that way because the lines getting in now are just not cool.
Yeah, no, it has its pluses and minuses, but I think
but no, I think
getting in the mountains is amazing. I think it's great for the mind. Physical activity is so important. Yeah. So the more we can share that with people, I think the better.
Yeah. Talking about to inspire the newest generation, how do you feel like competing now is different for maybe kids coming up into the sport now than it was for you? I have to think that like social media, and I'm a social media manager here, so it's a personal interest of mine, has to affect that quite a bit. But what does the difference look like to you as you're like watching these young athletes come up into the sport as opposed to when you came onto the scene?
I think sports in the U.S., I think maybe globally, is like going through an interesting struggle right now, and like the industrialization or professionalization of youth sports.
Right.
I think like when I was a kid, like you competed in everything. You did soccer, I did mountain biking, I did some basketball, I did some flag football. Like you did everything, and I like didn't travel for those really either until like middle school. I started traveling for soccer some, but it wasn't like you're traveling out of the state. I was traveling, to various places in Salt Lake Valley or Provo Valley and stuff like that. So it wasn't the same level that it is nowadays. And I think that's like things have gotten too serious at too young of an age. And so I'd like to see like sports go back to like you competed across a multitude of sports. You never travel. You just compete against your friends until you reach a certain level, which that certain level shouldn't be there until you're a teenager, really. More kids just need to get out there and play and not be in front of their phones or in front of a device, and just getting outside and playing, I think, is really important. Yeah. So I think like there is kind of a reckoning happening in sports in the U.S. And I'm not speaking about just skiing. I'm speaking about all sports. Like we need to, just get kids out there and playing, and like not getting on doing road trips and not having to like travel and have all the expenses. Like they just need to go out there and play with their friends and have fun with it. And skills naturally come that way.
Yeah. Do you see social influencing these young athletes? Like, I mean, for better or worse, right? A lot of the times, I think there's a lot of sports verticals. Like, for example, me, I'm way into cars, but there's a lot of like automotive influencers out there that maybe, for better or worse, they have a large following, so they get a lot of opportunities because they've cultivated this large following, where I see maybe some more talented people that have smaller followings are not getting the opportunities that I would like to see them have. Do you feel like that's happening with sports there, or do you still feel like, especially when it comes to like skiing and ski racing, that it's still pretty subjective because you can have a big following, but you've got to be fast?
Yeah, I definitely, like over the course of my career, like my first year on the World Cup, like we didn't have cell phones or GPS or anything. Right? So it was definitely a different era. Like we were following paper maps, and so like
printing out map quests.
Yeah, like we traded books and stuff like that. And so like amongst the team, there was like a tighter, like there was more conversation, tight knit. You like knew everybody. Towards the last bit of my career, like I was over 10 years older than a lot of these kids, and like they're glued to their phone. And like, of course, like you as an athlete are essentially a small business,
right? Oh yeah.
And so social media is a very is a very important part of that. So like that is important, but I think, unfortunately, like, I don't want to sound like, oh, these kids these days, but like people are like too glued to that and like take too much, either spend too much time on it or too much stock in it, or like just I think it can be a distraction. So I think like anything, like moderation is really important. And I mean, I see that with so many of these young athletes is like they will maybe like prioritize some of the social media stuff to the performance, or just like generally being
to the detriment
like
of
aware
else.
of their surroundings and their team and like what needs to get done.
Right.
I think it's hard to balance these days. Like it's hard from the athlete perspective now. Like that is something you have to do.
Yeah.
Like
especially for
even if
sponsorship stuff,
exactly.
Right?
Like some people like love doing it and some people don't love doing it. And so when I was first on sport, it was like purely like how good you are and like maybe like how good your personality was in the media. Like those are like the two things.
Yeah.
Like now it's like those two things plus like being really active and good at the social media side of things to not necessarily make a living, but like that would help amplify or like give you those opportunities, or it's even a requirement nowadays. So it's a tougher balance, I would say, for sure these days.
Gotcha. I wanted to talk to you, since we are essentially a financial podcast. We talk about, all sorts of topics, but just wanted to talk to you about the financial side of things and maybe even the financing side of, ski racing and stuff. And so your first, do you remember getting your first endorsement deal? Was it Rossignol?
No. So my first endorsement deal was the year I made the ski team. I got a contract from UVEX.
Okay.
And it was hundreds of dollars.
Right. Okay.
Not much. I mean, it was after really the Olympics in 2006 that like I started getting bigger deals.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it was like life changing. I was able to buy a house in Park City and like bigger deals. But I think I was like, my parents taught me a good sense of frugality.
Right.
And also like I knew that it was like that sport was finite, like it wasn't going to last forever.
Sure.
And what's really lucky as a professional athlete in like the sport of ski racing is like the barrier of keeping up with the Joneses is really low.
Yeah.
Like
a lot of ski
for me to live off of and like and also like being 21 years old, like all my friends were in college and stuff, so like I could have a house and live off of 5% of my income and like be living luxuriously versus all these.
At that age, a Little Caesars pizza was basically the only thing getting me through the week. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think like I had a good upbringing from my parents to like understand the frugality of like saving, investing, and also like knowing that like I shouldn't be like showy or like blow it, and like I should keep this because it can compound into the future, and who knows if I like go into the fence and hurt myself. Like I need to have this as like a buffer too. And so I think luckily I had that like upbringing, that head on my shoulders to like think of it in a really long-term sense. I think that's the most important thing when young people, like if they do have money, like you have to think long-term because it is really powerful to like be invested early.
Yeah.
But also like just being able to control like your own destiny. If like you live within your own means, you have a lot of control.
Right. But you felt like you were pretty objective, because I have to assume a lot of this stuff was coming in probably in lump sum. Yeah.
I mean, that's like in ski racing, you get paid like twice a year.
Yeah.
Like like various contracts come at different times, but it's not like a weekly paycheck. Like you gotta like budget yourself out.
Did you set budgets for these? Did you say like I'm only gonna touch like this percentage of it or something? Because I'm not gonna lie, you must have had way more control than I did at that age. My prefrontal cortex was not as developed, and I remember getting student aid, being like, oh, that will cover like my textbooks and like part of my tuition. But there's like $200 left over, and those new Nike SB 6.0s are looking pretty sick. And I remember spending hundreds of dollars that I should not on like shoes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to like say I didn't do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
but I think, like I said, like I understood
knew the finite
at a
nature
young age that like both the career could be very finite, and that like I didn't need that stuff too, because like my friends didn't have, like, it was like kind of easy to, like, I was lucky in that sense. Like for the most of my career, like I lived off just like a small percentage of what I was making my sport. I mean, I was very lucky to be like at a very high level and like doing well.
Yeah.
But like, I guess I just knew like it was finite, and like in order to like set it up for a long term, like you had to be frugal and like understand.
Did you ever sit down and like budget it all out, like write it out, or you just kind of had in your mind like, I don't want to be spending a ton of like what's coming in?
I wouldn't say, like, I probably wish I had and should have like been more thorough in it, but I guess I looked at it as like, oh, I'm just going to spend like a very small percentage of my money, whatever that percentage was, and like call that good, and like look at my bank statement and like see that was actually like penciling what it was, you know? So yeah, I mean, I guess, like I said, I was like really lucky that like I wasn't forced to like be super exacting in it. I could be very macro, and it worked, in a sense. So
I assume being on the road though too kind of like stymied some of what you would spend, right? Because like, you got to travel light, you're on the road, a lot of your sponsors are probably paying for
the ski team pays for like your meals and your travel and all that stuff. So like basically from August till March, like I didn't have to spend anything. So I was really lucky in that sense. I was able to control costs, which is the most important thing. Yeah.
Would you recommend anything to like maybe a burgeoning athlete that's coming up and kind of coming across the same things that you were, of like maybe coming into some bigger contracts and maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's saving and investing in the future. I think it's easy to like get that first windfall and be like, okay, like what am I going to buy with that?
Right.
Like, do you need that car? Or like, even like, I know some of the athletes like, oh, I should go buy a house or whatever, like, or a condo, and like, but like, I'm like, it could be a great investment, but also like you're stretching yourself. Like if you get in on something and you get injured the next year, like I know a couple of guys, like they bought a house, they got injured, like their contracts washed away, and like then they're forced in a situation where they got to offload something like that as well. So I think like, you know, I always think about trying to create like the maximum amount of flexibility. And so like that's kind of what I would say to an athlete is like try to set yourself up for like freedom and flexibility, more than the lifestyle side of things. Cause
was there something that you did splurge on though when these like came across? Is there anything that you particularly, you mentioned like I wasn't always smart. Is there anything you can think of that you just were like, I deserve this, I've earned this? Like,
I mean, like honestly, like it wasn't, and I was probably 26 or 27, so I'd had like a bunch of good years. I like bought a Daytona Coupe, like a kit car, like a sports, like race car.
Like a Factory 5?
Yeah, exactly. And I almost never drive it now, and it's like cars are cool, but like, yeah, it's like, why? So
you're talking to the wrong guy.
Yeah, exactly.
All of my money would have been gone on cars immediately.
So yeah, nothing, like I was lucky to like not do anything major, and at that point, like I could afford it. But it was like if I had done something else with that, it'd be at a different scale now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming in today, Ted. We really appreciate it. We cannot wait to see you, obviously, on TV, hosting a lot of the Olympic skiing events, and we look forward to that. It's so interesting to learn about the mindset that this has taken and what it took for you to get there. So appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is fun.
And we'll see you guys next time on Guiding You Forward.